have zero information on this motor. Oh no.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a very cold Wisconsin day today. I think we're down to 20 degrees Celsius. That's about 6 or 7 negative. If you've been to this channel before, you would know that I got this thing for around $2,000. I redid the timing just to find out that it has oil pressure issues. So my best guess is that we have bad crank bearings or main bearings, whatever you want to call them, and the oil pressure just cannot build up. Something to mention is that the oil pressure issue would only turn up once the motor is all warmed up. Drive this thing for a solid 10-15 minutes, depending on the ambient temperature, and it would have been perfectly fine. But then after a certain amount of time, once the motor is warmed up enough and the oil is nice and hot, that's when it becomes less viscous. It becomes a lot more fluid, and the oil pressure let it come on, and pretty soon the motor would start making some ugly noises. Oh no. Something I wasn't able to do to keep driving this thing around for a little while, put in a bottle of Lucas in the oil, and that made it significantly more viscous and kind of helped me drive this thing around for at least a few hundred miles. I think I actually daily did. I never took it on any long drives because I figured that sooner or later that oil pressure issue would turn up again, and that viscosity sooner or later would get to the point where it's just not enough. If you want to learn more about this car, please go check those videos out. Bottom line is that this engine chewed itself up quite a bit. Because of the lack of oil, a lot of metal contact was made, and I'm sure there's a ton of metal inside the oil right now. As you saw in the opening video, I have picked up this new motor. One big issue, this motor is for a Phaeton, a Volkswagen Phaeton, which is a pretty cool car. I would like to get my hands on it at some point. But this came out of that, which is still that same 4.2 V8, same belt drive with 2 chains for the camshafts. But it is slightly redesigned. So they do have different engine codes. The Touareg comes with a XQ motor. This is a BGH, which means that there's some differences. So the main difference is the location of the alternator. So because the Touareg is meant to have some off-roading capabilities, they moved the alternator up higher to kind of elevate that and allow the Touareg to go through some deeper waters. And there's probably some more things. I did notice that the timing covers are different. Instead of the clips, there's some Torx. I've asked around on some Facebook groups, and everybody says that this is not going to work. There's way too much stuff that's different, not even including the electrical stuff. All the accessories are different, blah, blah, blah. And potentially even the transmission is not going to bolt up to this motor. I believe them, but I also want to give this a shot. I like, a decent challenge. I know that this is a very low mileage motor. It has 105,000 miles, which, I said very low, but for a 2004 car, I would say that's pretty good. Not to mention the fact that I bought it for 250 bucks, which for an engine is quite cheap, especially for a Volkswagen Audi engine. 250 bucks is almost pocket change. Just swap over the oil filter housing, swap over the alternator, brackets, whatever else that is required to try and make this work. And worst case, if it does not work, what I can do is just take out the crankshaft bearings, take out probably camshafts, I know, some bottom end stuff, and basically tear apart these 2 engines and make one functioning Touareg engine out of them. That's the plan right now. It is quite likely that I'm going to fail because this is a very, very major project, and I'm not very experienced with engine internals. And I guess the next step would be just to pull the motor out of the Touareg, which is going to be a fun little project. There's some guys on YouTube that have done this swap, or not swap, they've pulled out the V10 motor in like 4 hours, and they also had a lift. They probably had a little more experience with these than me, but fuel rails look a little different. As you can see, this one wraps around up top and goes by the PCV. This one does like a full circle sort of situation. Ooh, what am I getting into? These 2 valves that control flaps in the intake manifold, they're in different locations. Upper left, one is bottom right. These two are in a significantly different configuration.
Once that's out, I'm going to take a closer look at the engines.
There are a few different strategies that you could use. There's a couple of things that I've seen people do differently. So obviously, like I mentioned, the subframe does drop down with the motor. So you do have to disconnect everything up top. That's a no-brainer. Then the bottom is where the differences are, specifically the suspension. One of the options is to unbolt the 3 bolts that hold the struts in and drop the whole subframe with the knuckles on each side. Brake calipers, all that would come down with the motor, stand the ground as you lift the body. I don't really want to do that because then you have to mess with the brake fluid. I don't feel like doing that. I don't think I need to have brake fluid dripping. What you also can do is unbolt
The strut from the control arms, unbolt the sway bar and take out the axles. Drop this all down while the wheels, the hubs, the knuckle, the strut, everything stays attached to the car apart from these bottom control arms and the axle, which will come out with the motor.
I don't really know for sure which method is better. I'm doing a lot of speculation here, but I do know that I would rather not deal with brake fluid. Instead of taking out the 3 bolts up here, all I do is take out the axle and unbolt the sway bar strut at the bottom. Seems easy enough. So first order of business, I think I'll just disconnect the axles from this side first.
The axles seem to have this 12-point nut. I don't even know if I have anything that will take that off. So we're off to a great start. I did not have the right socket. So what we need is a 32mm 12-point socket, and yeah, that works just fine. So Google didn't lie to me this time. Don't really need to remove these nuts fully just yet. I just need to crack them loose while the wheels are on the ground. Oh, that is gonna be a challenge. The reason why we gotta do that is exactly because of that. These are usually so tight, and if you were to lift up the car and try to spin them, you would only rotate the wheel and not the nut, and it would just never come off. It's relatively corroded in here. Improve my chances of success, I'm gonna spray this down with penetrating oil. This is a mix of automatic transmission fluid and acetone. Apparently that makes a very good penetrating oil. Let's see those deadlifts. Ugh. Probably shouldn't be wearing skinny jeans, but oh my God. Hopefully I don't break anything. Jesus. Yeah, that brake bar is not gonna be happy. Oh, I think we broke it loose. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Nice. We should be able to remove the nut the rest of the way afterwards with an impact gun. Now I've got to try and do the same thing on the other side, which does look a little more corroded, so it's probably going to be just as challenging, if not worse. Oof. Now, the question is, was that the sound of the nut breaking loose, or was that my socket cracking? Ah, that was the sound of my breaker bar breaking. Where did I buy this from? Guaranteed for life. That's exactly what I wanted to see, and that's from Duralast, so AutoZone brand. I'll let you know if they actually stand to their guaranteed for life warranty and give me a new one. Oh no. Well, I still think I can get this replaced. Okay, we're off to a great start. This project is gonna be great. So in order for me to get to the ECU connector, or like the wiring harness connector that goes to the ECU, which will come out with the motor, to do that I need to take off the windshield cowl. To do that I need to take off the wipers. I'm just using painter's tape on the windshield to mark the spots where the windshield wipers are so that I can reinstall them in the proper position. Oof. How did that happen? Somehow things just really didn't cooperate with me. I didn't notice that this got cut up on something, so when yeah. Did I mention that we're off to a great start? I might as well just give up now, save myself the headache. In all honesty, I'm kind of surprising myself with the fact that I'm so dedicated to getting this Touareg all fixed up, because this is not really, you know, a high value car, even fixed. Considering the clean condition that it's in, I mean, it would go for maybe $5,000. But I don't know, I just really like this car for some reason. It just checks all the boxes for me. It's got air suspension, so it is really nice to tow with it. This is gonna suck, isn't it? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a couple of days, and the reason for that is because last time we did work on this, it wasn't the greatest time. So, I did get a new breaker bar. In case you were wondering, AutoZone does have lifetime warranty on, I think, all of their tools. It was a bit of a pain in the butt because the employees I talked to at first, mind you, this was on a Saturday night, so it wasn't the most experienced employees. So the upper management usually works Monday through Friday, and then it's the high schoolers and such working Saturday, Sunday. The AutoZone system said that that breaker bar was, the warranty on it was only for 3 months and it was expired as I bought it like 2 years ago. Obviously, the breaker bar itself said it's guaranteed for life. So, oh my God. They said they couldn't do anything, they can't override the computer. I was like, all right, cool, I'll just, no worries, I'll email corporate. I know how corporate works, I worked in retail in a long time. They'll just give me whatever you want, basically. They located a reference number for the warranty and basically told me to show up at a store, give them the number, and it should be all good. This time it's more staffed. There's somebody who seems like a management type of guy there, and he's like, yeah, I don't know who told you that, like, but I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. So he basically just gave me a new breaker bar, pulled it off the shelf, took the old one, and told me to go on my way. So that's what happened. Now let's check if this one is any stronger. It would be kind of awkward if it isn't. Come on, don't do this to me. I'm going to heat this guy up. You can pick up one of these. They're called heat induction tools. Mini inductor. Tighten down the coil and you push the button. It even has a little LED on there. And basically this coil starts emitting a lot of heat. As cool as this guy is, the only issue I do have with it is that you have to sit there and wait. And we don't like doing that, right? Let it sit for a while. It does say professional use only. So while the torch is doing this, I'm gonna use this guy to try and heat up these wiper arms because they're still seized up. Well, we're off to a great start. I guess we have no choice but to turn it into a liquid. Oh, who would have seen that coming? Huh. Oh, wow. Okay, there we go. Basically, you just have to hit it hard enough. I do have to admit that taking off these 5 nuts, 2 for the axles and 3 for the windshield wipers, took a lot longer than they should have. This was hours. Take this whole thing out. There's one thing that I should have done before I even started any of this, and that would be checking whether or not this motor is good at all. Like, I have zero information on this motor. The guy who sold it to me said that it came out of a running and driving car. He seemed like a very nice, trustworthy guy. He provided some advice in terms of starting a dealership because he has a dealership. So let's see if this thing spins at all. 2 full revolutions. Seems like the motor spins pretty well. Before we go any further, I need to disconnect the battery. With the 2 bottom bolts on the seat bracket removed, the seat just folds back. We unclip these 2 clips. And then it's the usual 10 mil. Okay, with that done, we have 0 power to the car, and we should be able to carry on without setting stuff on fire. Next, we can remove this grommet. So the main wiring harness goes up through this grommet and splits into 2, one going to each side. Let's start with this one because that seems to be easier. Let's just start with disconnecting the harness. To disconnect the harness, we just pull it outside, and there you go, that's it. Then we have a couple of connections over here, right by the windshield. There we go. Unscrew this 10mm ground. Now this side of the T is free, pulling out all of the clips that hold the harness to the chassis. And then we have to take off the cover from the ECU. And then all the T25s going around the perimeter. Taking off this cover basically gives you a pretty good idea of what you need to disconnect to free this bundle of wires. You just basically wiggle them side to side and they come right out. They are color coded, so no need to mark them. Pretty easy to figure out which ones go where, unless of course you're colorblind. But even colorblind people are able to tell colors apart. So basically you have no excuse. So now this should be able to just come right out. There's a zip tie that holds this down to the chassis, so we're gonna have to do something about that. There we go. So theoretically, this is all there is that connects the motor to the computers. At some point I am gonna have to drain all the fluids, which I know I have to do. I just really don't want to, because I'm gonna make a mess. Let's do the air boxes first, because that's pretty easy, and I think it's going to free up enough room for us to be able to kind of see what we're doing. Clamp 1, clamp 2, box 1. These are some pretty nasty air filters. Then we repeat the same procedure on the other side. There we go. Disconnect the coolant hose to give us better access to the air box. This airbox does have a little connector, a little hose connected to it, which can be very frustrating if you don't know about it, because it does hold the airbox in place. What you want to do to remove it, push on this ring. I'm going to try and use this Phillips head for that. There we go. That did come off way too easy, and I'm the only one to blame for that, because I'm definitely the last person to have worked on that. All right, airbox number 2, also with a moldy filter bottom. I'm gonna tuck away these connectors for the MAF sensors so that we don't forget them and they don't get crushed when we pull the motor or when we drop the motor. These vacuum lines we're gonna have to figure out later. That sounds like a problem for future Artem, because that guy. Out of wiring, it seems that we have at least 2 more things left. For one, there is this main power line going to the positive terminal. At the jumping points, there is a cover here. You just stick a flathead screwdriver into this guy, pull it forward, and that releases this tab up top. And then we just have one fat starter cable, which has probably a 13mm nut going to it. So we're just gonna disconnect that. And if you are doing things incorrectly, just like me, and you have the positive cable still connected, as far as I understand, that means that this cable would still be hot, and because of that you really don't want to touch anything with your wrench while you're unbolting this. You know, just a little heads up. Terminal just slides out. We can throw the knot back on so that we don't forget it. Pull this off the zip tie so that it doesn't get hung up on this firewall when we drop the motor, and just make sure that we have nothing else on the side that will potentially get caught up. Something I'm definitely seeing is the power steering lines. We're gonna have to drain that. I do want to disconnect this secondary air line, so it does just pop off. You just have to work it out. So now this can just drop off with the motor, while this is gonna stay in place along with the secondary air pump. We also have these 4 connectors for the oxygen sensors. They're also color coded and they are of different sizes, so it's impossible to mix them up. All 4 of them are now disconnected, but the problem is that we need this side of the connector to be free, because these are going to come out with the downpipes and the exhaust. The downpipes are going to stay on the motor and come down with that, so we really need to make sure that these are free. Pretty sure they're supposed to simply slide out, but because of the rust and age, as you can see, all this corrosion, that's exactly what holds it in place. All right, all 4 are free, and we're just gonna put them along with all this stuff. I probably shouldn't do the fuel yet. Maybe I'll do that right before I leave, because there's gonna be a decent amount of fuel fumes, and I don't wanna be breathing it in. It gives me a headache. I mean, I know I just said that I probably shouldn't do it so that I don't breathe in the fumes, but might as well, right? There's also this vacuum line that simply pulls off of the nipple, and I think we've disconnected everything over here. We don't have anything up top connecting the motor to anything else apart from this big metal line, which has something to do with the secondary air injection, I believe. There's 2 connections for it, one being right here. You just squeeze on these 2 and it releases the tabs on the 2 other sides. We're looking good. Not to jinx myself, but things are looking pretty promising. Now I think we gotta do my least favorite part, which is draining the fluid. because everything after this will be structural, as in suspension, engine mounts, subframe, and stuff like that. Looks like there is a radiator drain screw, so we could try and remove that. Unfortunately, it's not angled very well for you to drain coolant with the bumper still on. I am not willing to remove the bumper for this job, so we're gonna probably make a mess. To loosen that screw up, I'm gonna use this little guy right here, and we're gonna need a flathead as big as we can get. Something didn't work. Well, that's good. It just snapped off. So looking from the top, you can also see a coolant temperature sensor going into that. So I think it'll be easier for me to unplug the coolant sensor. We're just gonna need a flathead screwdriver. I'm gonna slide it into the metal clip. Pull that out. Okay, the clip is gone. And now the coolant temperature sensor should just pop out. The only thing holding it in place is an O-ring. We're gonna pull this guy out. Open up the reservoir so that we get some airflow. We can start disconnecting the coolant pipes. Looks like we have a main one going in over there into the backup motor. Same with this guy. Do have to disconnect these radiator hoses. We're also gonna have to disconnect the radiator hose at the bottom. This coolant hose is very easy to reach, so I'm just gonna disconnect it here instead of going over there. Okay, so this disconnects the upper radiator hose. However, we still have the lower. You could disconnect it at the radiator, or you could disconnect it right here. Right here, I think, is a much easier option. Arr! That was my pirate impression. I'm not actually a pirate. I think this might be very useful at removing this hose because it is a tight space. And I can just slide it into there. Okay, that is unplugged. All right, so that's two coolant hoses down. I think what we have left is the power steering fluid and transmission fluid because both of those have coolers up front. Probably easier to drain the oil with the motor in the car. So let's do that. I think we're ready to lift up the whole car and start looking at what we have to do at the bottom because both the power steering and transmission fluids will be drained from the bottom. Probably should have done this a long time ago.